Hi everyone, today I wanted to cover a game called Looking Up, I See Only a Ceiling. It is a game very close styled, at least, to the Milk franchise. It's also a game that is a visual novel, so it has a lot of similarities, and I will be drawing those similarities as we go through the review. And I will also be talking a little bit about the general themes of the game. However, I will not be getting into spoiler territory with it. That's partially because I feel like a big part of games is the story, and I feel like spoiling this story would sort of ruin it, both as a game but also as an experience. And I want you to have a reason to also, check it out, so you don't just go here and get the entire experience and then never touch it. But yeah, it is a very niche game with exactly 222 views as of now on Steam, and a all-time player peak of 12 people. So it's definitely not the most well-known game, even when looking at footage format for YouTube, like just sort of looking into what it was. I couldn't really find anything. I could find like a couple of videos, but it was mainly the game's trailer. So I decided to bite the bullet. It wasn't a very big bullet, it's $2. It's a cheap game. It is really worth getting already right now, I can tell you that much. And I was like, we might as well check it out. So today we're going to be doing that. It's been a while since we last covered horror, so I thought, why not do it now? So let's get right into it. So, let's talk a little bit about the story, because the story is at the end of the day the most important thing in a visual novel. I will again not be discussing direct spoilers, but I'll talk about, what the game is all about. It's a game about stress, and it's very clearly themed around stress and how it affects a person. And it's a very interesting subject because in the Milk franchise we took depression and social anxiety and so on up. This game does something very similar, and in a very similar way, in my opinion, with, stress. And it does it really well. And the way it works is essentially, you'll see yourself throughout the story. It's hard to sort of explain without, directly showing it. But I want a lot of things aren't really stressful in the game, since you technically do have infinite time, like gameplay doesn't really tie into it. But the way the story is worded, there has to be something in there, and it's really well done. I think we've all been in the situation where you have a million deadlines you need to do and you just don't feel like you have enough time. The game perfectly encapsulates that into a story. Not as much the feeling of it, but the story itself definitely conveys that. And if you've ever been there as well, maybe you've been at work where you have had a lot of work days in a row. I've had myself a month or two without really any pause. And at that point you do get stressed, and you do get that feeling while also having other obligations, obviously. And this game again perfectly encapsulates that. And encapsulates that really well. So that's really all I wanted to talk about with the story, because again, I don't want to get into the direct story because that would be a spoiler. So let's just continue on to, the presentation and visual stuff. Alright, so what really grabbed me with this game was definitely the art style. Because you see, it reminded me a lot of the Milk franchise, which I enjoyed a lot. I do expect it to also be at least to some degree inspired by it, albeit no official confirmation there. But I definitely expect that with how it's written and the style itself. But the presentation of it, when you look at it visually, is sort of bleak, but with some happy spots. Again, it fits the theming perfectly. When you're talking about this stressed out environment, it's very bleak, it's very almost boringly bleak, in that regard. It's very unique. It does remind me of the Milk series, if that makes sense. It has the same style, and it doesn't matter where you are if you're in the actual bathroom of your house, or if you're in the kitchen, or in the living room, or what you're looking at. It's all very stylized in that way, and it fits the general theming perfectly. And there really isn't a whole lot to say about it, because even when you pick up items, and in this game you actually hold those items in almost a first-person view, which is fairly unique and something I haven't seen before when it comes to these games, despite there not being any time on whatnot. It all fits in really well. It doesn't look strange, because you would expect it to look strange when you have the two hands in Doom floating out in front of you. but they actually managed to pull it off in a way that looks really good and believable as well, and that's really sort of impressive, especially when you consider just like everything that has to go into like designing that, like the arms, the animations, and so on, and like it all looks pretty fucking good. And yeah, so that's really all there is to talk about the graphics, and let's talk a little bit about the sound design, because that's one aspect I find people often like skip over, like talking about music and stuff. So let's do that. So talking about the music in this game, there's only really one word that comes to mind, and that's minimalistic. This game's music is not really music as much as it is house noises. It is almost the equivalent of white noise, but not really. It is definitely something more along the lines of background noise, I feel like. It is pretty fitting though. It's not something that really interrupts the game like it normally would when you hear just a soundtrack consisting of bangs or something. It fits really well into the theme, and they manage to utilize the music like really well, in the sense that the music enters in the right moment. It feels really good when the music is there. Like the music sounds good. It's probably not something that I'd listen to outside of the game, but it has that uncomfortable tenseness to it when it needs to, and it overall adds to the atmosphere, which is one of the most important things at the end of the day, because games like this can't really exist without a good atmosphere. It's what the Milk franchise pulls off super well, and it's what this game pulls off super well. The fact of the matter is, the atmosphere is heavy and thick, and it is hard not to enjoy it. And that's why I think it is super interesting as a game, because it manages through not a whole lot of game to tell a really interesting short story in a very interesting manner, with some really interesting and well thought out characters in a very minimalistic game, but it's not a lot of game. Because at the end of the day, this game with AFK time took me 4 hours to beat. That's not a whole lot all in all, and it has a free exploration mode where you can just walk around and try to piece some lore together and whatnot. But at the end of the day, that's not a whole lot. Like always, before we get into any of that, I feel like we should be just giving you a little tidbit of that soundtrack. Just let you listen to some of the good old music. So that's what I'll be doing. It has to be said, preemptively apologizing. Like if there's anything here that's like bad in terms of the music, it's because I've recorded it myself from the game. Normally I go and find a soundtrack and play that instead. But the soundtrack hasn't been officially released yet, so we'll just use some music from the game. So, when we're talking about this game as a package, I think it's a really good one. The game itself is not more than $2, and I think that's fairly fine, not €2 to be exact, and I think that's fairly fine. I don't think that's an already big price, and I think that's something that most people can easily use on it without like thinking too much. The game itself is extremely compelling. It has a story that actually makes me give a shit about the main character. Again, I feel like that's something I have said. I really do enjoy the story. Like, unironically, I think it's one of the best parts of the game, and I think it's something that completely elevates the game and the gameplay. So it's something that I definitely recommend checking out. You know, it's not a game that is super expensive or complicated. It tells a nice little story without too much thinking needed, and honestly, it's probably perfect for a person like me that loves the storytelling and less so the puzzles that some of these visual novels can have. Overall, I think it's an incredibly impressive game made by a very small team that honestly has managed to be everything it needed to be. It delivers a nice message, it delivers a good story with nice characters and an interesting, I wouldn't say world because the world is our world, but an interesting insight to the world and dealing with your problems. And again, very much like the Mode series, it deals with a very real, very close to heart problem, that being stress, that I think most people can relate to. And it deals with it in a very, very, I'd say, good way, that it doesn't make it like sort of into a joke or anything like that. So all, it's a high recommend for me. Most of the games we've been talking about have been in general, and this is just another one of them. So there you go. It's a very good game. I absolutely loved that. And Silver, the main dev behind it, I think, at least from what I can see on like YouTube or whatnot, at least the name of the YouTube channel, yeah. He's just been a nice guy. He's been incredibly active within his own community, and I think that's really incredible. So there you go. I think it's pretty cool. I think it's a good game and with good people behind it. So yeah.